Greetings and welcome to RPG Engine. Today we're going to talk about prefabs, which is basically a collection of items that you want made into a cohesive unit of their own to move and resize all together. Makes it much easier to handle things like a cart full of goods. So that's what we're going to work on today. To start a prefab, all you have to do is decide what you want to be a master object, like this box of eggplants, and then decide what you want attached to them, like say these onions. So if you wanted to gather them together, if you click on an item, you'll notice it has several options for commands: set parent, set child, remove parent, remove child. It's relatively straightforward. If you want this one to be the parent, you tell it you want to set a child, and then you would click on an onion. Now, when you hold down Shift and hover over the parent, the child changes color. You'll notice it's a green onion now. That means they're together. You can spin the parent, the child comes with it. Also moving the parent, same thing, child goes with it. If you move the child, however, it is still its own entity, does not affect the parent. So now you can move the child over into the box and they are collected. This is a prefab, basically. A very, very simple one, but a prefab nonetheless. You can do the same thing in the opposite direction. You can grab the onion, tell it you want to set the parent, and then click on the object. There you go. Now, just like that onion, this onion has the same box as a parent, and you can move them together. Still a solid chunk. A third way to do this is to click on your parent again, hold down Control and Shift, and then click on what you want as a child. And immediately child's just like that. Very quick. If you had a whole bunch of things in one place you wanted to collect together, you can hold down that Shift Control and just go click, 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 click. It'll immediately pop them all together. And the last way you can connect things is to just hold down Shift and then drag whatever item you want onto a parent. Once it changes color, you know it's going to assign it, then you just release it. And again, there you are, all together. Now if you want to disconnect something, then you just simply click and drag something. It immediately disconnects them. So be careful when you're trying to adjust things later. If you wanted to adjust these onions, you don't want to click and drag them around because it will disconnect them from the parent. You'll want to use the handles, like so. But we want him to be part of that mess, so we are going to hold down Shift, drop him in like that. Take a look at him. He needs to be a little bit more adjusted. There we go. Box of eggplants and onions. There is also no limit on the amount of parents and children you can have. So if you wanted to make this box part of this box as a set, but you wanted to keep this one in charge of all the onions, then you can do the exact same assignment that you do for other children and parents. Hold down Shift, drag it on top of the box. There it is. Everything on the box is a child of it. But if you hover over this little eggplant box, you'll notice that it shows the overbox as a red, means it's a parent, but it also shows the onion still is green. You'll note that if you look at the onions, it only shows one parent above, and that's where that ends. All the children will show up for any parent, but only one parent above children will show up as colored. So now we can adjust this where we want it, a little askew. Now those are all set together as a prefab. So moving back to the wagon, we want to set everything up in it. Then we can just start holding Shift down and dragging items in. take a look at everything. Looks about right. We'll want a cover for it. Shrink it down. So we'll select the wagon again, hold Control Shift. There you are. One prefab wagon full of goods. Another thing to keep in mind with prefabs is if you want to make sure that you can't accidentally yank any of these things out when you're clicking on the wagon to move it, you can right click on all of these individual items and lock them. Barrel, the veggie box, barricade, and the shanty roof. So now when you click on something that's been locked, it just gives you the cart. And that means you can't accidentally grab these logs and detach them when you're just trying to move the cart. It all defaults to the cart. And if you ever want to move one of these things later, you can of course right click and unlock them, and then you can yank them back out again. So you'll notice when you click on a collection that you've put together as a prefab, when you click on the master object, it actually shows you a new option down here, Save as Prefab. So you can open the save window, get a screenshot of it. Not bad. Maneuver a little bit here. That's a little bit better. Enter in a name. Call this a wagon of goods. Put in some search tags like cart or transport. Notice it gives you an item count there and description. Can also add to that Western goods wagon. And then you can decide to either save it to your computer or you can save it to the workshop. It defaults as a public save at the workshop. That lets everybody see it. But you can set it to friends only, so only you and your Steam friends can see it, or you can set it to private, and then only you can see it. Handy for when you're trying to come up with a surprise for your buddies and you don't want them to find out if they are looking at your profile or in the workshop in general. But most times you'll want it as public, so you just make sure that's set correctly. Click on Workshop, tells you it's uploading. There we go. Wagon of Goods has successfully been uploaded. Now that it's saved to the workshop, you can download it by clicking on the download arrow. You'll see it in all or in the actual prefab section. And you can just click on it, bring up the list of all the available prefabs. You can sort them by absolutely everybody or your friends, or look at your own personal prefabs. And once you find a prefab you want, you just select it. It'll ask you to override it if you already have it in your selection over here. And there it is, the prefab you just made. Once you download it, it'll be available here with the rest of them in your prefab tab. So it makes it quick and easy to pull in stuff that you've made previously. One final note about prefabs and resizing is that because of how 3D engines work, resizing things and then making them in charge of other things as a parent can have some odd effects. So if you wanted these two put together, and you wanted this box to be more square than rectangular, and you stretched it out, and then you made it a parent of the barrel, you'll notice that it warped the barrel. Just how 3D engines work. It's a weird thing, but there's a couple of fixes for that. You can reset this by hitting R, stretch that box back out, but this time, since you're not going to change the scale of the barrel, you can make it the parent instead. And there's no issues there, because the barrel is still an even scale. You can make it really big and really small. As long as the scale is even, it's not going to warp any children. Now if you decide that you definitely want both things stretched in different fashions, like a very tall barrel and a very wide box, The last way you can get around this is to drag in one of these locator nodes. These don't show up to the players, they can't ever see these, but they can be handy to group things and to make them easier to handle, and also to become apparent. Since you can just leave it at whatever scale you want, we can make it very small. And then hold down Control Shift, and there you have it. Both those things are warped, but not in odd fashions from one another, and you still have them collected as a prefab. So there's your quick tutorial on prefabs. I hope you enjoy, and be sure to create lots of things and save it to the workshop.